Hi, everybody, and welcome to day 21 of my 30-day Facebook Live Language Facilitation Challenge. I'm here to talk to you today about the key components of your language facilitation plan. And it's really important. All of these tips that I've given you all along this whole journey, all of that is amazing and helpful, and all of those tips are really good. But for my Waves of Communication families, it all starts with a language facilitation plan. And I think any journey to get anywhere, including taking your child from nonverbal communication into verbal communication, is definitely a journey that requires a plan. So today I'm going to tell you about the components of your plan. And I see some people are jumping on. Hi, Swati's here, and Anjan is here, and Brianna's here. Hi, ladies. Thank you so much for joining me on my live today. I'm so glad you're here hanging out. It's kind of a rainy Monday afternoon, evening here, and I've been working all day on with my daughter Ella on getting the components ready for my new online version of all these videos that I'm getting all cleaned up and looking great for you. And I have been thinking about a brand new plan that I put together for one of my newest families, my family in Sweden. Mwah! I'm so excited to get started with you guys. And since I just put together their plan, I thought that today I would share with you the necessary components that go into a language facilitation plan so that you understand all of the things that go into this process. So thanks again for joining me today if you're just jumping on this live, and if you're catching it as a replay. My name is Marcy Melzer, and I am an intuitive speech language pathologist, and I help parents teach their late talking children how to use the words they need to share their wisdom with the world. And I do that with my Waves of Communication parent coaching program, where I help you, I actually develop your custom plan to help you take your kids from using whatever they're using now, nonverbal communication, into using words naturally during your everyday activities. And today on this video, I'm here to show you the key components. And I'm actually going to split this topic into 2 days because there's quite a bit that goes into this plan, and I want to make sure that you understand all the details so that when you're on your own journey, you understand that all of these components are part of your plan. So today we're going to be talking about the assessment portion of the plan, and that's the part where you have to figure out what's going on and where we are to start out with before we can get into crafting the strategies. Necessary for any plan is to take an assessment of the current state of conditions. And that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. And these are the things that you need to have in consideration. For the families in my program, I collect this information a couple of different ways. I have a phone interview with them, a strategy session, and then I also have a survey that I have them fill out with some detailed information, and then I have them submit video of their kids. So if I ever create a plan for you, those would be the things that I'll be using to collect this information from you. And I see Tammy's here. Thanks for joining me, Tammy. Today we're talking about language facilitation plans. And the thing that I want you to understand is that this plan is your plan for you as parents. This isn't a plan for you to strategies that you're going to be activities you're doing with your child. This is a plan for you because you are the ones who are transforming yourselves into language facilitators with these new strategies that you get in your plan. But it all starts with you, and you're the one who's going to be making these changes. So here are the things that you need to assess, or that we need to assess when we make sure that, you're developing a comprehensive plan. And the first thing is communication methods. Remember, we're talking about current conditions right now. So we're going to look at what your child's communication methods are. What is your child using to communicate what they want, what they need, what they feel, when they're happy, when they're unhappy, all of those methods your child is using. And they could be gestures, behavior, words, sounds, all kinds of different things, writing even. So those are your child's communication methods. And then we also need to assess your communication methods. And what ways do you communicate to your child? What ways do you use to understand your child's communication? And so it's important that we assess all of that part of it, your communication and your child's communication, so that we understand what methods you're using. And then we also understand what methods you've tried before that have worked and haven't worked, and the ones that you felt good about and the ones you didn't feel good about. So all of the things that we assess, all of the methods that you have been using, we are going to make sure that you assess what has worked well and what hasn't worked well, because it's important we understand both of those components and we use the best ones when we move forward in your plan. And Nikki's here. Hi, Nikki. Thanks for joining me. And Steve Miller, too. Hi. Today we're talking about creating a language facilitation plan and what I do to help you as parents teach your child how to move from nonverbal communication into verbal communication. And the first component of that we're talking about today is the assessment portion. And we talked about how we need to assess the communication methods that you're currently using and your child's currently using. And the next thing that we need to assess is the teaching and learning methods that you and your child are learning or have learned historically. Remember, we're looking at what has worked and what hasn't worked. And so we need to look at how has your child learned the things that they already know today. So has it been through watching video, or you taught them, or they learned it at school, or they learned it from the babysitter? And what methods did you and the babysitter and all of those folks use to teach your child? So what methods did your child learn? What do they have experience with so far? How have they learned what they've learned right now? And then the other thing that you need to assess is the methods that you have used to teach your child. So maybe you tried to teach your child to swim one way and that didn't work, and you tried a different way and it did. Or maybe when your child was learning to walk, you used certain methods and changed to other methods. It's the same about using communication. We need to look at the methods that you have already used and the methods that you haven't tried yet are, potentially what comes later. So the next thing that you need to assess as part of your language facilitation plan is we need to look at your family's unique preferences, your child's unique preferences, and yours as parents, your unique preferences, the things that you enjoy the most in life. Because if you haven't met me by now, you know that if it isn't fun, it isn't fun is the primary component for my Waves of Communication program. And we need to have a keen understanding of the things that you and your children love to do, each one of you individually and together as a family. And we also need to assess your family's unique challenges. So perhaps it could be physiological challenges if you've had to overcome ear infections or some other illnesses, dietary issues, things like that. Those challenges that you've had to overcome, it's important that we take those things into consideration, because in overcoming those challenges so far, we need to look at what has worked for you and what hasn't worked for you, and what kinds of learning styles you're accustomed to using, and what things are maybe a little outside of your wheelhouse. That doesn't mean that we're not going to try them. It just means that we have to understand the current state of conditions and what's going on as far as your unique challenges that are presenting to your family. Now, As far as communication, we need to look really in depth at those unique challenges, because sometimes the sort of fallout from challenges of not being able to communicate what you want are causing other issues like behavior concerns. So if your child is showing a lot of tantrums, for example, because they're using tantrums as a communication behavior instead of words, then we need to figure out how to address those tantrums if it's turning out to be something that's really problematic. Most of the time, we address those issues by replacing those behaviors with words, and those behaviors go away. But we need to understand what those concerns are and the kinds of things that you are not able to communicate with your child, or you're not able to consistently understand that your child's able to communicate. So we have to understand the problems, and that's the biggest part of this assessment, I think, is that we really understand the communication challenges that you're having. Because in order for us to determine the right strategies for you to address them, we have to understand what the problems are. And we've already taken a look, because we've looked at your communication style and your learning style and the other problems that you have, what some of the root causes of those communication problems might be. And that's all part of this assessment portion, is that we look to make sure that whatever strategies you've used so far that have worked, we understand what those are, we understand what hasn't worked, and maybe try to identify why those things haven't worked, or we need to come up with some sort of an alternative. So it's important that we understand where things stand. And that's why today that was the most important thing that I wanted to talk to you about. Now, there is one more component, and that's what's sort of unique about the way that I approach it. And I feel like this is probably the biggest foundation, understanding communication, where we want it to go and what the problems are. Those are the sort of building blocks that we use to create your language facilitation plan. But one of the most important things to help me decide which strategies to recommend for a family is the last thing that I talk about in this assessment portion, and that is the energy assessment of your family. And it sounds a little abstract and kind of, vague, which is why I'm going to tell you sort of how I do it. Remember, I told you that I collect this information in some different ways. I interview families and I talk to them about the kinds of concerns they have and the kinds of feelings that they're experiencing, the frustrations and the struggles that they're having, so that I can understand what some of the blockages in the energy might be, what's causing these big frustrations in your family, so that we're able to understand and overcome them. So the most important thing is that we understand your energy. And so I do that, like I said, by interviewing families. But part of my special survey that I give to my waves of communication families, is I have you start to think about how your child is moving through life. How their energy, when their energy is up, when their energy is down, if their energy is very up or very down, because kids learn best when their energy is focused and centered. And if we can do some assessment about the kinds of events in your life or the kinds of energy that your child exhibits frequently, and if it's too far skew one direction or another, I can give you suggestions on how to bring that energy back to a centered focus level, because we all learn everything when we're centered and focused, which is why sensory integration is a big part of that ability to channel some of that energy. Kids chew on things, pull on things, swing on things, slam into things, run fast, hide, all of those things because of how they feel and their energy. And if we can understand how kids feel and the energy that they're experiencing as they move through life and as they communicate with you, I see we got a like about that. And Joshua's here and Alexandria too. I'm so glad you guys are joining me, because this part of it, this energy evaluation part of it, this is really important that, we assess that. And not only, again, are we just looking at your child's energy, we have to look at your energy too. And when you're experiencing this frustration about the lack of communication that your child has, what are you doing? What are your communication behaviors? How is your energy relating to that? And that was a big deal for a couple of my families, that once they understood their own personal energy and everything moved back towards centered and happy and safe and fun, then they were able to take these strategies and help their kids overcome the things that caused all of that worry and fear and frustration and anxiety about not being able to communicate. Because I gotta tell you, there's nothing more worrying than not being able to get your message understood by other people. So I think what's really important is that, we really understand before you can even start to put together the strategies of your language facilitation plan, you incorporate this assessment portion. And so tomorrow on my live, I'm going to be talking about the strategy portion, the actual part where we break down some of this information and craft the strategies that are necessary for you to strategically move your child from using these nonverbal ways of communication into using words functionally, naturally, during the everyday activities that you do all the time. And so tune in tomorrow for the second half of this video. Make sure you hit the notification button so that you can get notified when I go live tomorrow if you want to join me live. And if you have any questions about this, be sure to put them in the comments below here, because I always go back afterwards, even for folks who have watched it on the replay. If you have any questions or comments about what kinds of assessment sorts of things you want to use, or how to maybe even get started with me to get your own special custom assessment and language facilitation plan, you can reach out to me in the comments, send me a private message. And if you're watching this video on the YouTube channel, go to my wavesofcommunication.com website and you can watch my free class there and schedule a free language facilitation strategy session. The first part of this assessment part is actually free, where I talk through your concerns and how to develop your language facilitation plan, how we go about that. So contact me via the website and tune in tomorrow for the second half of this topic on the key components of your language facilitation plan. Have a great night, everybody, and I'll talk to you live again tomorrow as part of my 30-day Facebook Live language facilitation plan. I'm Marcy Melzer, intuitive speech language pathologist, and I'll catch you tomorrow.